And it was on the way to the printer, and then somebody somewhere just said no, and it stopped.
I have a piece of off-record information for you, which we can go into background if you want to.
Okay.
I have it in writing from Kit Green that the remote viewing program was never closed down and went underground with the use of drugs, hypnosis, and electronics. I have this in writing. Video. But, I mean, maybe this is old news.
That's old news.
No, I pretty much knew that. What's wild though is, I'll tell you, here's my take. If you go ask somebody in government, do you have a remote viewing unit, they're going to say no. And technically, I think they're telling the truth, because when you say it went underground, what they did was they just spread it all out. Now, all these various organizations, such as Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and the DEA and all like that, they all have the remote viewers.
That's right.
But it's not. They don't have a set, official program of remote viewers. They just blended them all in with everybody else.
This is Project Camelot, Carrie Cassidy and Bill Ryan, and we're here with Jim Marrs. He's a very well-known writer, very strong investigator. He's written several very well-known books, very successful books, Crossfire and Rule by Secrecy and Alien Agenda and The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And we're actually here to talk to Jim about the rise of the Fourth Reich. We're going to kind of concentrate on that area, but we want to go all over the map because I know that, the secrets of remote viewing is something you're very, very familiar with. And you've just covered the whole gamut. It's really amazing, and you do so in a very coherent way. It's very understandable. I think that no one can read one of your books and go, well, that's the most outlandish thing I ever heard. It's not true. I think that basically you back up everything you've got to say. You were a journalist originally, is that right?
Still am.
Okay, still working journalist,
right,
on top of your books.
Unfortunately, there's no real journals around anymore. Only corporate advertising delivery systems. But,
right, absolutely. And basically, you're considered something of an expert on the Kennedy assassination as well, aren't you?
Well, that's where I cut my teeth because a working newspaper man in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, going all the way back to the 60s.
Amazing. So you're also doing the circuit. You're talking at various conferences, and we're here today at Laughlin, where the UFO Congress is being held, and you've just given a wonderful speech. So what we want to do is kind of talk about where America is going from your point of view, get some of the background, the sort of background of the Nazis and so on, and what you've been talking about in your newest book, and also then kind of circle back around and talk a little bit about, UFOs, the secrecy, and what might be seen in the future.
I have a question of my own, which I could add there as an adjunct, which is, why would somebody be talking about the rise of the Fourth Reich in a UFO conference? How's that for a question?
Well, okay, and I have to say that we're in some interesting times right now that are actually bringing forth this sort of questioning that I think is not even just UFO nuts, but political aficionados, the man on the street. Everyone's questioning their reality right now, I think, and why what's happening in America is going on.
I think you're absolutely correct. Because of the crumbling economy, and because so many people are now waking up and realize that no matter whether they vote for a Democrat or Republican, they seem to get the same socialist programs. They are now beginning to realize that there is a whole different paradigm than what is portrayed in the corporate mass media. And so the question is, so why am I talking about the Fourth Reich at a UFO Congress? And I think the answer is because people who disregard the subject of UFOs and who just write that off as just total fantasy and lunacy They will never, ever be able to figure out what's truly happening in the world because they're tossing out a big piece of the puzzle. It's all part of the same big mosaic, and you have to put all these pieces together to figure out what's going on. Just as a for instance, I truly believe that one of the main reasons for our precipitous invasion of Iraq was to make a beeline for Baghdad and use a mob scene as a cover for a very concerted effort to loot the Iraqi National Museum. What were they after? They were after newly discovered artifacts, tablets, scrolls, and such that were being found in the ancient Sumerian cities of Uruk and some of these other places by French and German archaeological teams. Interestingly enough, the two countries who were most opposed to our entry into Iraq. And what was taken? Very possibly knowledge of ancient energy manipulation technology. And this gets into anti-gravity and a bunch of weird and exotic technologies that conventional science would laugh at, but then when you really study the issue, you find that these technologies have been worked on since at least World War II and have been kept under very ultra-secret classification programs ever since, because this is our leading edge technology. So you can see how it all ties together. Ancient history, UFOs, secret societies, the world government. It's all part of the same big ball of wax. And unless you back off and take that broad overview and study a wide variety of topics, you're never going to figure out what's going on.
Because this is something that Bill Cooper said. I remember in one of his very famous lectures that he gave in 89 or 90, you may well remember it yourself. He said, if you don't factor UFOs into this jigsaw puzzle, you will never understand what modern geopolitical events are all about.
Aren't we also talking about stargates? And, because when you get into free energy, you get into, from what I understand, vortexes, and you get into the possibility there is a stargate in Iraq as well that they might be covering up. And then you get into the Anunnaki, and, so you're into aliens or ETs, whatever you want to call them. Have you gone down that road at all?
Oh, sure. When you follow the evidence, that's where it takes you back to. And when you mention the possibility of a Stargate or some sort of dimensional portal in Iraq, that takes me back to the Bible and the story of King Nebuchadnezzar. And he built this structure out of gold, which they translate as a fiery furnace, but obviously it was something else because people went in and out of it. Of course, when his people went in, they tended to keel over and die, which tells me it was some sort of an energy field. And then he got the 3 Hebrew priests and told them to make it work and put them in there. And lo and behold, eventually there was 4 people in there. So 3 went in and 4 came out. So obviously they were opening some sort of a portal or a gateway.
Wow, that's very interesting. So where do you want to take us with this? Because I know that there's a whole movement in your speech where you're talking about manna from heaven, the monochronomic gold, monatomic. How do you say it?
It's the single atom gold, monatomic gold.
Okay.
Orbitally rearranged monatomic gold, single atom elements. These, by the way, this is nothing that's just outrageous and unheard of, because monatomic gold, silver, heavy metals, they're in everything. They're in water, they're in food, we ingest them. This is just something else, another layer of our 3D material existence that we had not been aware of prior to the 70s and 80s. But then that's nothing new. You go back 100 years, they weren't aware of atoms. So we're learning. I think the thing is, and the reason that we need to look into this exotic stuff and the question of ETs is because I think that we are in a conditioning process right now that, yes, there may be life